We also have gun raffle going on, and that's Wendy in the back. We have a bicentennial raffle that is number 20 of 200. I can't remember, sorry. Of the bicentennial. Number 24 of 200 that are in production, and we are only selling 200 tickets of that. And then we have another ticket, which is a 3-gun raffle, and you can buy those from Wendy at the back table. Any questions so far? All right. Next Tuesday, 1 week from today, is voting day. And that's when I was getting to I try to follow my schedule. So you get out and vote. Something else I'm going to talk about what's that? Yes, we'll meet here next Tuesday night. Yes, and we have a speaker. I'll look in a minute. April 9th. So next Tuesday is vote. Next Tuesday evening here with we have a local citizen who is going to speak on health and 5G and a few other health items that are affecting us right here in Cape Girardeau County. So she will be our guest speaker next week, Dr. D. And then April 9th, next Saturday, and this is very important, you guys, we are having Blind Joe. And we called it a rally. Hindsight, maybe we should have said it's a concert, because it's a concert. But we are opening the doors at the Eagles Lodge at 3 p.m. And Blind Joe plays he plays a lot of country songs, and he is coming from Minnesota all the way down here to play for us. And we're going to have entertainment all day long. We're going to have games. We're going to have drawing, 50-50, some raffles, and just a lot of fun stuff. We'll have the kids' corner again. And so please, anybody plan on coming next Saturday? Raise your hands high so we can kind of get a rough. Awesome. The information's right there on your table. Take a screenshot or a shot of it with your phone, and we're online. We're We the People of Missouri.org. You can find us a little bit everywhere. All right. And then we're going to move on to the other thing I want to tell you about. This is our first ever We the People of Missouri conference. It is a statewide conference. Everyone is invited. Any citizen who wants to learn more, just curious or whatever. We have a wonderful speaker lineup. It starts June 24th, and we will have Secretary of State Ashcroft do our keynote that evening. It's our kickoff for the conference. And then all day Saturday, we have wonderful speakers lined up. We have, because Cape Girardeau County is the booming county in the state, several of us from here will be speaking and teaching at that conference. So Andy will be one of the teachers at the legislative breakout session. Myself and Rita will be doing a breakout session for chair and vice chair. Connie and Marcella will be doing another breakout session on treasury. There's Dr. Lewis. Come on in. Raise your hand, Dr. Lewis. William Lewis has entered the room. All right, so anyway, our state conference, you guys should have received registration information in your email. We have it on our website, we have it on our Facebook page, we have it in Telegram. And for anyone who does not do any social media, I have the paper, the old-fashioned paper registration forms right here with me. So if you would like to do it that way, early bird fee is $75, and that goes through, I think, March 15th. And so we put a lot of effort into this. It's going to be wonderful. We also have Senator Eigel is going to be our morning speaker. Senator Moon will be our lunch speaker. And Chris Ann Hall will be our evening keynote speaker. So,
Did you say March 15th?
what did I say?
You said March 15th.
I have no idea why I said March. Okay, so the state conference is, and I'm drinking water, June 24, 25, and 26. Oh, early bird. Yes, I think it's May 15th. Early bird registration. May 15th. All right? $75. But you'll have to call and make your own hotel reservations. Any questions about that? Clear as mud. Great speaker lineup. You're not going to want to miss it. All right. So next, we're going to go on to our guest speaker. And Sheriff Dickerson and I, we have sat and we've had, I've met with her several times over the last several years. Several of us in here, we text her and ask her if we can have a meeting. She makes time available for the citizens when you want to meet with her about a concern. And I could probably go on, but instead of stealing the show, I'm just going to let her tell us about herself and hand it over to her. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Jan. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised right here in Cape Girardeau County. I attended Jackson High School, married my high school sweetheart. We've been together ever since. We have 2 children, 2 grandchildren. So we still live here in this community. This community is my home. And I want to keep it my home. And I want to keep it my safe home. I worked at the sheriff's office for over 35 years. And so when the sheriff decided he wanted to grow up and change careers and become a U.S. Marshal, I decided that I wasn't quite ready to retire. So I went ahead and stuck my neck out and did politics, which I swore I would never do. Ran for sheriff, won my temporary election that I went after becoming the interim sheriff to finish out last 2 years of his term, and then the following year I ran again, which was last year, and I am now serving in my next 4-year term. So a little bit about the sheriff's office here locally. The duties of the sheriff are normally known as the keeper of the jail, keeper of the courts, and keeper of the peace. As far as the jail, the biggest thing I learn from people when I'm out in the public is the fact that when people pass that building, they do not realize that we house over 260 to 65 inmates. The jail is built for 220 and we're cramming 265 in there regularly. During COVID, it really became a real game of shuffle to try to keep everybody safe and healthy. A lot of the explosion has happened because some of it was due to COVID, because the courts slowed down. We've got people, we have one gentleman that's been in our jail almost 2 years and never had a preliminary hearing. I don't know if you understand what preliminary hearing is, which most of you do, but that's kind of your first step of where you're going to go after you've been charged. But it just keeps getting continued and continued. He's agreeable to that, and he's, who he's represented by, but that's kind of why we are cramming so many people into our jail, is because of the slowdown of the whole system. Some of the other changes that have taken place is a lot of the municipalities across the United States and everywhere are almost getting out of the business of taking care of their ordinances or the crimes committed on the municipal level, and they are therefore taking those charges to the state level. When they move to the state level, they then become my responsibility. So instead of housing people or taking care of them on the municipal levels, a lot of them are coming immediately over to the county level. Another thing that's happened is the Department of Corrections. They, through some law changes, through some of their internal actions, people are getting out of the Department of Corrections faster. Or used to be, in the old days when I first started, if they were put on probation or parole and they violated that parole, we immediately put them in the car and took them back to DOC. Now they're no longer taking them back immediately. We are housing them here on our local levels. A lot of times they're staying here, and then even the parole board is, they're not even doing their hearing up there anymore. They're doing it through maybe Zoom or through our video arraignment and doing it down here, so they continue to stay in our jails locally. I understand Department of Corrections faces the same dilemma that I do. They are overcrowded, they're understaffed, so I get some of it, but some of the rule changes, they're pushing the state level back to me. So now here's the municipal pushing and here's the state pushing, and I'm caught in the middle. So we're doing what we can. We're handling it the best. I have to say, living in Cape Girardeau County, I'm so proud to live here because we do have the support of our citizens. You have come out and supported us on so many times when we've had different issues going on. You just have to watch what's going on around the country with the other police departments and law enforcement agencies, And thank you all very much for your support of us here locally. The courts, as you all know, we had the new courthouse built, and no, I did not get a brand new office in the courthouse. I did not get any space in the courthouse. A lot of people ask me how I like my new building. Well, it's not really my new building, other than I am grateful for the tunnel that connects the jail and the courthouse. In the past, if you've ever lived in this area, you've seen the orange chain gang go across the street. And that was such a danger for my staff. It was a danger for the inmates, because there were times we had certain inmates that were threatened, and we knew they were being threatened from the outside, and it caused us, a lot of extra staff to make sure their safety and security were kept intact as we took them over to the courthouse. So the tunnel has been a very blessing thing for us to be able to use that. Another thing is my staff is in charge of the court security, and they're in charge of the security for the judges. When we had to split our time running between Cape and Jackson, that took a lot of extra effort, because we would have a court going on over here, court going on over there. We were running back and forth, keeping everything going. Bringing it all into one courthouse has helped us immensely, that my staff is now in one location. When they built the courthouse, they built 6 courtrooms. And so when I questioned whether we were going to be able to get any more staff, they said, well, we don't know why, because you'll never have all 6 courtrooms going at the same time. And guess what? Yes, we do, quite often. But I will give praise to my court staff. They are keeping things running. The only thing I did add was 2 extra people to help with the security there at the front door. If you've been into the new courthouse, of course you have to go through the tachometer and be checked, and they're in charge of all the people coming into the courthouse. So, but as far as actual court staff to guard the judges and take care of them, I'm operating on the same staff I've always had. Keeper of the peace. Everybody generally recognizes the keeper of the peace. A lot of it is our patrol officers. Originally, when I took over as sheriff, we had 24 patrol officers, and that included supervisors. That meant I had 1 or 2 people on at a time. When you're running and covering 579 square miles, it never fails that officer is on the south side of the county when something happens on the north side of the county. We were not taking care of the square mileage we needed to take care of, and we were putting those officers' lives in jeopardy. I'm very grateful for the backup that we constantly receive from the Missouri State Highway Patrol officers, and the working relationship that we've tried to continually develop over the years with us and the other local law enforcement agencies. I am grateful for that, because they were our godsend when we only had 1 officer on the roads out there. Since then, we've hired enough people to fill the original 24, and we filled 6 additional positions, but we still have 4 open. When the law enforcement tax was passed, my promise was to add 10 more staff to the patrol division, so that we can have, right now we're running 3 to 4 officers on a shift. They're out there working together, backing each other up, so it's a great thing. The other thing is that the jail staff. Originally, when we had the jail staff, we had 28 positions, and that included our supervisors, and they were guarding 220 plus inmates, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That meant I had 3 jailers on at a time. That meant I had 1 jailer running the booking, 1 jailer running the controls that opens and closes all the doors, 1 person out trying to go pod to pod to check the security, and that was it. If something happened in a pod, we had to wait for patrol officers, we had to wait for Jackson officers, we had to wait for Highway Patrol to respond to assist us in the pod. We added 17 positions, and right now we have filled the original 28, added 15, and only have 2 openings left to add in the jail. So again, I think that's a good representation of this area, that people do support law enforcement. There is still enough interest in it here. I was just over at the Law Enforcement Academy last week. We have limited, used to be you go over there and there was a class of 30 to 50 candidates going through the Law Enforcement Academy. Now they're doing good to get 15 to 20. but we're doing our best to get everybody trained and get them out there, get them going, so. We have our 911 Communications Center. We combined with the Jackson 911 Communication Center. We put both communication centers together. There again, it was for staffing. You know, they had a limited number of staff, we had a limited number of staff. The biggest cost savings was the fact when we needed to upgrade our radio system, they needed to upgrade theirs. We put our money together and we have upgraded to a very up-to-date, robust system that handles the Missouri statewide operating network of radio systems. That came into play the other day. It's a system called Moswind, and we got to see it in full action the other night. I know you have probably heard about our car chase up the interstate. I think we have now taken away Barry Hovis's longest chase in Missouri history away from him, and he has graciously let us have that. But we had calls coming in, us and Jackson both, that people were getting their vehicles broken into. We had a citizen, they had their vehicle broken into up in the Fruitland area. They left the Fruitland area, but then they came back and he noticed it was the same vehicle. So he got to watching them, and he got in his vehicle and started following them up the interstate. While they were going up the interstate, they did fire shots at the citizen. Luckily, he was not hit. He immediately backed off, and in the same time, he's on the phone with our 911 dispatchers. Our dispatchers are getting our officers en route. Our officers got behind them and realized that they were behind the car. They started following them, chasing them, whatever you want to call it. So we did follow them up the interstate. They ended up in the Arnold, Jefferson County area up in St. Louis, and then they crashed. Some people question, you know, why did your officers follow them? You know, if it would have been at the level that it was only car break-ins, that may have limited our authority to do that. But when somebody shoots at one of our citizens, my officer went after him, and he did a great job. And it was lucky because normally my officers in a car by themselves. And just to set up the scenario, you know, who you are, you're driving a car, you got a mobile laptop you got to be working with, you got a radio you got to be working with, you got a phone call coming in because somebody's following up to check on something else, and you got this and you got that, and he's traveling 100 miles up the interstate. Luckily, he had a training officer, or an officer he was training with him. That officer that was in training took over the radio, took over the phone, kept everything in contact, worked on the mobile laptop, and that way the officer driving the car could concentrate on the pursuit, and that's why they stayed as safe as they did. So we have caught 2 of them. They were both juveniles, and of course the Jefferson County area authorities, the St. Louis County authorities are familiar with several of the other suspects in it, and they are on the lookout for them as we speak. So I mentioned the law enforcement tax. I don't know if you were for it or against it, but all I can say is, if you voted for it, thank you. Thank God for that money, because at the time when I took over, our pay was getting low enough that we were losing employees long before I took over as sheriff. We were losing employees constantly. We lost a lot of employees. We had building repairs that we couldn't even afford to do. Since it passed, you know, we've gotten some building repairs done. We've got busted pipes fixed. We've gotten ceiling tiles replaced. We had doors in one of our cell block areas that would not lock. They would lock them thinking they had locked them, but the inmates, having nothing else to do for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, would find a way to jimmy them back open. And that was such a security risk that my officers would go over there, walk down that hallway to do their security check the doors, and directly a door would pop behind them before they got to it. So we got those doors fixed, so that is a very big safety issue for us. We remodeled a little bit in our building to give some expansion, to give my officers room to work, because we're adding officers, thank you. So we were building a little extra room. We have bought all new radios for our officers, for our cars, and we had put in what they call a repeater system. Before, when my officers would get out of the car, if they were on their walkie-talkie or their handheld radio, if they got out of the car, it didn't reach. They lost all communications with the dispatch center. With those repeaters in the car, what happens when they push their handheld to talk, that signal goes to that repeater, and the repeater takes it and throws it through the car radio back to the dispatch. The handhelds are a lower level operation radio, where the car radio is what they call a 50 watt, which makes it a much higher volume to send that signal back to the dispatch. The other night during the pursuit, by being on the statewide system, my officer that was pursuing those vehicles could switch to the channel and talk to every county along the way. He talked to Perry County, he talked to St. Genevieve County, he talked to Jefferson County. When they were wrecked the car up in Jefferson County, he was on a channel they call Region EIOC, and everybody was talking together. The officers up there, the troopers, everybody was talking together. And I just cannot stress enough how valuable that is for an officer when he's out there, when putting his life on the line for everyone. Another thing we just put on board that you probably noticed, we have a new officer by the name of Zeno, our K-9 unit. We're really excited. We have not had any kind of K-9 unit since probably 20 plus years ago when we had a couple bloodhounds. We used those quite actively until they had to be retired. We just never had the funding, we never had the ability to pay an officer to be that K-9 handler, and so now we're doing that. We brought that K-9 on. We have, in many years, we could not pull the expense off because we utilized Jackson's K-9 units and we used Cape's K-9 units. They're the same as us. They're suffering from staff shortages, so they're losing some of their K-9 officers too. It got to be to a time that, it's kind of up to us to step up and join those voices and put in our time on that also. So we now have our K-9 unit, and he's already been over in Cape City and helped Cape City. He's been at one of the local schools, and he just really finished his training, went out on the street yesterday, and has already had 2 successful finds. He had one successful find. They had a gentleman hiding in a crawl space. The officers, of course, couldn't figure out exactly where he went and what he'd done because of how the friends that were there with him covered up the spot. The K-9 Zeno located him and alerted the officer, and they found him, drug him out. So today they had a car stop, and Zeno hit on some of the drugs that the officers weren't able to see or find, and then they had a successful and recovered several pounds of methamphetamine. So he's already done a good job. A big factor of our officers is always training. We had gotten so that we couldn't even send our officers off to training. We are really excited. We have, for example, our K-9 training. We wouldn't have been able to afford to send an officer off for that K-9 training, and we now, of course, have our K-9 unit, and we've sent our officers off to a lot of other training. We continue to keep our continuing education hours, but also send our officers off to specialized training. So we're real excited to get a lot of accomplishment through that. I could talk all night about the stuff that we've done, the stuff that we've been able to accomplish, but I cannot stress to you enough that that stuff means nothing without my people. We've had officers that left because we could not afford to pay them enough to keep them, and they're coming back. So it is great because I'm getting trained officers that have experience, officers that have knowledge coming back to us, and I'm really excited to get that accomplished. So, like I said, I could go on all night to talk about what we do, what accomplishments we made with all of your help and everything, but when I asked Jan, I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, well, just anything, and it's like, I could go on all night. But I guess my thought is I will just open the floor. If you have questions, I will try to answer your questions.
Okay, who has the mic? Hold on, because I have 4 out here. Come on. Please speak, go ahead.
First of all, if you don't know, this is the most powerful person in Cape Girardeau County.
That's right.
And my question, Sheriff, is do you have any jurisdiction or power in order to help the Cape PD control the violence in South Cape with the increase in shootings?
You know, the citizens of Cape Girardeau are a municipality. They elected to be a municipality. They have their taxes to be a municipality, and they have their law enforcement to be a municipality. But that being said, that, and set that aside, yes, the sheriff is over the whole county. But respectfully, that's the chief's business over there. We have a Jackson chief, it's his business here. They take care of their business, but they know I'm always here for them. And I am over there a lot. Major K squads, every time they have a major incident in Cape or in Jackson, or if we have one out in the county, the three agencies work together every time to bring their, most trained detectives together to try to help solve those crimes. I don't want to be the sheriff that tries to go in and overrun what the city is trying to do, because like I said, the city citizens are elected to be in a municipality. They have their officials to take care of the municipality, but if whatever they need, we're here for them. We have just partnered with license plate readers. Even though they're going in certain locations in the city of Cape, I partnered with them to help pay for that. There are several agencies that went together to help pay for that because it's gonna benefit us all. If I have something happen in the county and they go zooming into the city, then I have access to those also, the same way they have to give me information anybody leaving the city. We have a group effort, and there's programs when we're working cases of cell phone extractions. So we've partnered, it's pretty expensive, so each agency couldn't really afford to purchase it on their own, so we all three went together and purchased that. When we had the opportunity to buy some body scanners, I had been looking at them quite a lot because a body scanner, we have one in our jail, and what it is it scans you, it's like an x-ray, because everybody that comes into that jail, we can, with human eyes, check them, but we can't see internally, and that's where your contraband comes in a lot of times, your drugs especially, is internally. This body scanner will check that. It has the sensitivity that will alert you if there's a gun or a cell phone or anything like that. So far, we haven't found a gun internally, but we have found a cell phone internally. It's beyond my thoughts of where I want to go, but so as I thought about that process, I not only asked for the funding for myself, I asked for it for sheriff, or for the Cape Girardeau City Police Department and the Jackson Police Department, because I have 265 to 269 inmates, and guess where a lot of them come from? They come from the city. So it only makes sense to have that extra layer of protection over there. So we all three got together and partnered together. So, we're doing a lot together, and it's a lot behind the scenes. So, but for me to just go over and take over, there's talks right now. We have some officers assigned to a high-risk warrant unit. I have 2 of my officers on that. There's a lot of planning to be going into place of, how should we address that down there? They've tried several things and then they kind of fell apart, and so how are we gonna address that? So to say I'm gonna go in there and just take it over and do it, no, I'm not, because that's what his job is. But if there needs to be a plan put in place, we'll all work together. My officers are over there all the time responding to back their officers up when they have shots fired, when they have, a domestic. So there's a lot of times my officers are spending time in both the cities backing their officers up. So I hope I answered your question.
As the sheriff, do you see your role as a support role to the FBI or the authority over the FBI?
Good question.
We're law enforcement. We should work together. That's my outtake on it. Am I gonna stand by if the FBI comes in and does something that I don't feel should happen here in Cape Girardeau County? Yeah, I'm gonna stand up for Cape Girardeau County.
Good.
But we're all law enforcement. We work together every day. Again, you know, right here in Cape Girardeau County, we have several things going all the time. We're working together with different agencies. And, you know, one instance, I know we'll get there sooner or later, was the whole SAPA. You know, what would I do if the federal government came in to take away my citizens' guns? I will stand with my citizens to the end. Good thing is I could probably call any number of our local FBI, marshals, or any of them, and they'd be right there with us. So, you know, there are citizens too, but, you know, we're all law enforcement, we gotta work together.
First of all, thank you for doing what you said you would do when you were running. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So with regard to your officers, you mentioned that you had raised their pay. Could you explain a little bit about where they stand compared to Cape City, Jackson City, some of the other agencies? Because it seems like some of the officers are going from one agency to the other agency. So I'm just wondering how the pay and benefits for you compare to the others.
For years, we ran quite a bit farther behind, you know, the larger municipality. Right now, we're getting more close to on the same page of our pay. Our pay is not that much different. So, same way with Jackson, we're not that much different than Jackson.
And how about the benefits?
The benefits are basically pretty comparable. Each agency offers insurance. Each agency offers a retirement system. As a matter of fact, Cape City has the same loggers retirement system that the county does, so.
Thank you.
Hi, curious, and maybe this is the cities that handle this, but I'm interested in surveillance. And because at every stop sign, you see, all the stoplights, there's cameras everywhere. And what are the laws with regard to that? Because that's data being collected on us. Should we be grateful because we have the road? Or is anything that comes through that camera admissible as evidence, like can or will be used against you? What's the story on that?
I, and my agency, do not have any of those cameras.
Those aren't cameras.
Yeah.
Those are heat sensors for the vehicle to turn the lights.
Yes.
I work for KP.
They're not currently, because I know several years ago when I was actively trying to find out about the camera situation, I was told, and this is probably about 5 or 6 years ago, that Cape did not have the money to have actual cameras there, that they were just a thing. They were not cameras.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know since then what has become of that. So,
There are cameras in certain parts of the city. They look for certain crime, but the ones around the stoplights are not cameras, those are sensors.
And one question is, what access do law enforcement have to private CCTV? I think that has come up in Cape. And I'm wondering what access does law enforcement have if you have a bar downtown and you keep an eye on your sidewalk so you can go out there if something starts, a ruckus starts?
If it's a privately owned system, law enforcement only has access to what that privately owned system allows them to have.
by the owner.
Right.
What does that mean?
Let's say, for example, you own a bar, you have those cameras, and that's your information. I have no access to it whatsoever. If something happens, I come to you and say, hey, Tuesday night at such and such time, this happened, would you have a video of it? And then I only have access to what you give me. I mean, I can't come in and say I want the whole night from this time to this time to watch everybody that came in and out of the building. If I have a time period, then, and you allow me that access to that time, that's what I can have access to.
Hey, Mike, I can confirm that the business that we have, I can confirm that with the business that we have that you're aware of.
had some incidences and we've had to refer back to the cameras. I don't know if the officers asked my husband if we had the cameras or we offer to look at the cameras to see what was going on, but they don't come in and just, yeah. There's been times where I think some of the videos have had to go out of for some sort of prosecution, but that was only with our permission.
So can those be subpoenaed in a case?
That would be up to the judge and the prosecutor.
Okay, but if he did like a search warrant or something, coming from the county attorney or the prosecuting attorney, then he could successfully demand to see those.
It could
Okay,
be.
okay.
Questions? Raise your hand high so we can get you a mic. Question? Oh, come on.
I have another one. Oh, somebody? Yes.
Explain to me as the cell phone extractor that you just briefly spoke on.
That's only cell phones that have been used in a crime. If they've been used in a crime, then, you know, if, for example, you know, we've had murders over in Cape City. The victim, you know, we can't access their phone. Sometimes it might have valuable information. So then we would have to get the subpoena to get that, and then the cell phone extractor could extract the last phone numbers and things like that they called, trying to assist us to see, you know, who they were in contact with, to try to track down leads.
So the plan as of right now is to only use it to prove a crime.
Right.
Okay, next question.
Mhm.
Let's talk about these license plate readers.
Mhm.
What can you share with us?
There again, the only reason we would have to actively activate those license plate readers is if we've had a shooting in downtown Cape and we know they're headed across the bridge, it would alert when that vehicle went across the bridge.
In that respect, I see it as being a good thing.
All right, questions? We have one up here.
Just wanted to piggyback on the young lady's question about the salaries for the police department as compared to the sheriff's deputies. Is it true that the deputies are getting ready to receive about a 6% increase in pay within the next few months?
The deputies, my deputies, our calendar year runs January 1st to December 31st. Our raises came January 1st, and I did bump the salary up, and then they get a 3% COLA. So we've already got the bump up in January, and then whenever their anniversary date rolls around, they get the 3% COLA.
Their anniversary work date?
Right.
Work anniversary
Whatever day
date,
they
whatever.
started, yes.
Okay, thank you, just trying to verify some info that I got, thank you.
I want to preface this question. I try to pay close attention to politics and government, and your, I'll just say, pretty glowing report. We heard a mayor last night say that people were complaining about some of the problems we have in Cape Girardeau. He said, "Oh, those are everywhere." All he has to do is come to your sheriff's office and see that not everything is nationwide when it comes to staffing and pay and so forth. But so I want to thank you for what you've done since you took over from Sheriff Jordan. The one question I would have is, how do you see your relationship with the citizens? You guys are mostly out in the county compared to the two cities, but how's your citizen relationships with your officers? And I have no idea. I'm just asking. What's your perception of that?
Well, if you mean, you know, I always encourage my officers to, like you said, they're out in the county, so when you see somebody out there working in their garden, or you see someone out working on their car, stop, say hi, how you doing? You know, just do whatever you have to do. Sometimes we're so busy going call to call, you know, you don't really have time to visit. Same way as, you know, we go into Cape City, we go into Jackson City. We eat in the restaurants, you know, my officers are encouraged to talk to anyone while they're in the eating establishments if they can, you know, if they have the time. So we try to be open to all the citizens of the whole county.
And you don't feel like right now, and I haven't heard anything either, I'm just asking because there are a lot of problems in our country nationwide. You don't feel like your department has any kind of real ongoing chronic problems with relationships with the public.
I don't think so.
Good.
Again, like I said, I will
Good.
thank you all and all the citizens of Cape Girardeau County for the support we do receive. You know, just today, a little blip on the news as I walked through the break room was that the mayor of Chicago, they were talking about how short-staffed they were, that 660 of their officers retired last year.
If she was my boss, I'd quit too.
They also talked about her private
Security.
need and use of security.
Yes.
Is overwhelming.
You know, and I can say for a fact, I've been through those times and it's not pleasant that, you know, when you walk upstairs and there's something going on in the jail and there's only 3 people there, that you jump in and you answer the phones, you run the door computer, you're out there in the pods doing whatever has to be done. You know, you look upstairs and you see your officers running so short-handed. When you stand and you look at the schedule and you see your officers giving up one of every 2 days they have off to work overtime because you don't have enough staff, it affects you. It really does. And you will do what you can do for your people.
Any more?
I've got one. So as you're probably aware, the sheriff's department of Cape, Perry, Scott are outgunned probably 10,000 to 1 by the citizenry. So we've got your backs in that situation. All right? Can you tell us a situation where you would consider exercising the ability to deputize the citizenry?
You know, I can think of a lot of things. We saw something just north of us, you know. As the elected official, as the sheriff, I have to be careful of going out saying I would recruit you, all of you, because then with a lot of changes in the law and unfortunately insurance and everything, you know, when I first started the sheriff's office, we had what we called the reserve staff. They were volunteers. They came in and volunteered every week. And now we can't have them because if we have a volunteer reserve, they're considered our employee. I'm responsible for them, so then my insurance has to cover them, and that leads to another whole nightmare. But you know, just north of us in Iron County and Madison County, we saw them do that. The citizens came to the courthouse square and helped surround the courthouse square and be there. And if we had something like that come to our area, you guys show up, I wouldn't blink an eye and say, "You're mine." So, because I realize that you guys would be what would make Cape County what it is, and protect it and keep it as what it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Carol?
I remember that happening and hearing what was going on in Madison and Iron County. Is there a means of communication should you become aware of situations like that coming about in which the word can get out to numerous citizens?
Again, as the elected official, I have to be careful. I can't say, "Okay, everybody, I'm gonna put in a 311 phone, and if I need you, I'm calling." I can't do that. I can't organize it. I cannot make an organized effort up front. But I've had conversations with people in this room. I've had conversations with other people throughout the county, and they know, you know, Facebook is what it is. You know, if we knew it was coming and it starts going, you guys are gonna be aware of it. So, you know, people will show up. And that's what happened in that county. You know, the authorities couldn't go out and organize it, but the word got out, and guess what? They came.
I guess that's what, I was so happy to see that happened. And I just hope that we would be able to.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm done. Thank you.
No more sheriff's posses.
So, at the opening of your speech, you talked about your responsibilities and what you're in charge of, and you left a lot off. I mean, I just wanted to know that you have a lot more power than what you're saying.
Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir.
The amount of responsibility of a sheriff is immense, and it seemed like you left a lot off of that list. There's a lot of things that go on that the sheriff is responsible for or could overtake. We have a lot of issues we've gone through over the past few years where the people said, this isn't right and our rights are being stomped on. Introduction by you would have stopped a lot of what's been happening. And I'm
In
not
reference to,
the masks, the mandates. Yeah, I'm not saying it's all on you. I'm not saying that you're responsible for everything, but I'm saying that you have a lot more control than you're giving yourself credit for. You are, like my friend over here said, the most powerful political figure in Cape County. And I want you to know that, and I want you to know that there's a lot more on your shoulders than you think, if that's what you think. Is all.
No, I realize there's a lot on my shoulders, and you're right, I didn't go near into what the full responsibilities are. And it's been a trying time. It really has been a trying time. So, but we will carry on together. The biggest thing I want all of you to know is, I was raised with the fact that I should respect people. And I think our country has lost exactly what that is and what it means, is respect.
Why was that?
Sorry. This may be a non-issue at this point, but if things were to arise and occur again or repeat itself, I'm curious, what was the stance on the sheriff's department and your staff as far as vaccine requirements? And then also, how did those in your care in the facilities, were they given choices or were they mandated with vaccinations and that type of thing?
There were no mandates for mask or vaccinations in my facility for the inmates, for the people that work for me.
I have a question. A few weeks ago,
I live near Sprig Street in Cape, close to downtown, and I heard 7 gunshots in a row. So I called 911. The dispatcher said she was also getting calls at the same time. So does that go throughout the whole county, the 911, and then they just decide who responds?
Cape City has a 911 center that takes their 911 calls.
Okay.
In my office, we house the county and Jackson 911. However, I'm back to the radio system. Cape City and our office all went on the MOSWIN system, and so my dispatchers can hear what their dispatchers are doing and vice versa.
Okay.
When shots are fired and called out in Cape City, if my officers are available, they do respond.
That was just my, thank you.
Go ahead, Tina.
Any others?
Tina had one. Go ahead.
I was just kind of curious, as far as your deputies, how well versed are any of them on the Constitution and the constitutional rights of citizens? Because I've taken a couple classes, and in those classes, the teacher has told us every time that once a person gets pulled over, whether it's by a county cop or a city cop, whoever it may be, your constitutional rights are immediately stomped on.
When you go through the initial law enforcement training, there is constitutional training in that, and there, I'll get back to, there for a while, we didn't even have the funding to do the extra training. We had to do the minimum of what we had to have, but as we go forward, we're bringing more and more training into our office, and constitutional training is a big thing. I I don't know if you're familiar, you know, we have several firms here in Missouri that are strong supporters and strong constitutional teachers of the Constitution, and we're ramping up to bring several of them to our office, so.
Good.
So my question is, hopefully we won't repeat ourselves with the whole COVID nonsense. But at one point, there was the threat that they were gonna come knocking door to door, right? And they would be, you know, really challenged to get to a door at my house. But for people whose doors are readily available and they were gonna be, what's the role of the sheriff's department in that? Because I see that as a violation of you know, our civil rights, to be, you know, coerced into questioning, just questioning, like, what is your vaccination status, which is none of anybody's business, right? So what is the sheriff's role there?
Well, it won't be anybody from my office coming to ask you what your vaccination status is. If it's another agency and they come knocking at your door, I won't be there with them. And if you call me and tell me that they're there and you don't want them there, I will come and trespass them. To be fair, I would treat them as I would any trespassing case that goes on every day. And, you know, we will come up, we will try to work it out, but if it comes to the point that we have to take further action, then we will do what we gotta do.
Anybody else want to speak?
I have a question. Are you a member of any sheriff's association, and if so, do you take direction from them, or do you just listen to them and still decide for yourself which direction our county will go?
I am a member of the Missouri Sheriff's Association. I cannot remember the Sheriff's Association, Missouri Sheriff's Association, sending anything out saying the sheriff should do this, the sheriff should do that. You know, they will give us information, but then it's up to us to interpret it and do with it what we need to do.
They don't withhold any certain benefits or things from our county if you don't implement the things that they want you to implement them?
Not that I'm familiar with, no. And, you know, the Missouri Sheriff's Association really doesn't give the county anything as far as, I don't know what withholdings they would give because they don't have anything to withhold from us, but it's just an information sharing type group more than anything.
She's been busy learning about the Missouri State School Board Association because she's about to be on the school board, and that's a whole different ballgame. As it is with their national board, which Missouri left.
Definitely, yeah.
And so, yeah, I think the sheriff's is on a lot lower scale than.
So the way the Missouri School Board Association works. The way the Missouri School Board Association works is they take direction, it's a nonprofit, but they take direction from DESE, which is an unelected government bureaucracy. So our school is a member of the MSBA, Missouri School Board Association. Sounds good. Except for DESE, unelected, is funneling what it wants done through the nonprofit, and then our school has to do what the MSBA tells them to do. That's why I'm asking, are you able to free think as a sheriff within the Sheriff's Association, or is there some unelected body that's using the Sheriff's Association to manipulate what's happening in our county? Because that's what's happening with our schools. Our schools are being manipulated by a bureaucracy.
Yes.
So,
No.
that's good.
Well, don't let them if they start.
So what's the purpose of being part of the association? What is it that they provide to you then that makes you want to be part of that?
You know, there's 114 sheriffs, and you know how it is in your whatever line of work you do. I know you sell insurance. If you have an insurance question, what would you do? You would call one of your fellow insurance agents and say, hey, have you ever had this? You know, that's kind of what, and we funnel a lot through the Sheriff's Association. The Sheriff's Association helps keep an eye on the changes in the law. And then like when we have new legislation that takes effect August 28th, they give us a training session. These are the laws that have changed. This is, how it's gonna affect us, as far as, they changed, there's some legislation up now. Instead of holding somebody 24 hours before we charge them, we may be holding them 48 hours before we have to charge them. It's things like that that they do for us. I'd almost describe them more as giving us educational information as far as changes that are taking place, so.
Does the Sheriff's Association then lobby in Jefferson City?
We do have a lobbyist that's up there keeping an eye on, what the laws are changing for us that affect us.
Does that association align? I don't know. Does that association in its lobbying represent us here in Cape Girardeau? Because that's another problem with the School Board Association. They pretty much lobby against anything that we would want to happen here in Cape Girardeau and Jackson school system. So if you're a member of the Sheriff's Association, they have a lobby group and they're pushing things in Jeff City, that might be contrary to what we actually want happening then.
What we have is we have what we call zones, and like the sheriffs in my area are in this zone. When they feed something out, then we report back to our zone leader. The zone leader reports back to the, they're part of the board that gets with the lobbyists and says, the majority of the sheriffs are for or against this. They talk about why. If something else comes up, the lobbyists will give them information back, and then they get it back to us.
Go ahead, Doc.
So a few minutes ago, you mentioned that some things had changed to where volunteers are no longer able to help you. Can you speak to what those changes were and how we can go about undoing those?
When I say volunteers can't help us, I mean, we can have people come in our office and volunteer and do things with us. However, when they changed the legislation that a law enforcement officer now has to have what they call post-training, peace officer standard training, that kind of took a different turn on, before you could come in and say, I want to be a reserve officer, and the sheriff would say, okay, sure, here's your uniform, here's your this, here's your that, go ride with the patrol officers. Now that person can't do that until they get the law enforcement training.
They have to do the whole 6 months?
Yes.
So they have to be, certified by the state of Missouri.
Yes,
as a
sir.
law enforcement officer.
Yes.
For free.
If you want to volunteer in that capacity, so.
And your carrier demands that, your insurance carrier?
No, it's a state law that you
Oh,
have
it
to
is.
receive the law enforcement training before you can be a certified officer.
Anyone else? Andy, go ahead.
I think I've got half a question, half a comment. I think a lot of us hear the horror stories about maybe the ATF and the FBI and some of these raids and crazy things, and I realize that's usually the outlier, but I think that's where a lot of the concern comes in, that, where does our sheriff stand if that situation would arise, something crazy off the wall. And I feel like, I think you got our back, and appreciate that. In reference to that, there's, I guess, Missouri state law now says that the local, police and or sheriff's departments can't assist with ATF investigations, if I understand that correctly. And if so, what are your personal feelings on that?
Okay, due to SAPA, it says.
I can see you.
Sorry.
That's Perry.
That's our next speaker. It's just Barry Hovis. It's just Barry, no big deal.
Some of the wording in the SAPA says that we will not assist the federal agencies to come in and take law-abiding citizens' guns. And no, we're not gonna do that. It kind of, some of the wording was not as clear as what we would have liked. When they first proposed SAPA, I called the legislators, I went to Jefferson City and visited with them and said, I agree with this. I want clear, concise language that tells the federal government you cannot come into Missouri and take our law-abiding citizens' weapons.
That's right.
However, they put some wording in there that could be interpreted different ways. But as we all know, everybody can interpret everything a different way. Everybody can sue everybody. And some of the first things being brought to our attention was several criminals sitting in prison couldn't wait for the law to pass because then they wanted to sue because we had worked with, you know, possibly a federal agent. However, that person is not a law-abiding citizen. So, but because of the convoluted information in the language, there's been a lot of discrepancy on what the interpretation of that language should be.
When you say law-abiding, I assume you mean someone who's actually previously been convicted, correct? Not just suspected?
Law-abiding is someone that has not committed a crime and been convicted.
Excuse me, yeah, I said, but so non-law-abiding is not just suspected.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I didn't catch what you said.
Sorry, the law-abiding citizens. So if someone was suspected of committing a crime but not convicted, then you would not act on it.
You know, it's just like working any other criminal case. You have to have enough information to go and question them, you know, whether you bring them in or don't bring them in. You know, there's so many different scenarios to it that you can't just say, yes, I would, or no, I wouldn't. It's according to what happened, what the information is, and what other circumstances played into that. So it is something you have to take into deep consideration. You know, yeah, a lot of agencies had task force officers that worked with the DEA, worked alongside, you know, working drug cases. Well, what commonly is associated with drug cases? Weapons. So then you have to really weigh that option is, are your officers able to go out and fight that drug war? A lot of agencies aren't sending their officers out there to work with them to fight that drug war because of the wording of, you know, that gets into the involvement of weapons. I think the law was intended to protect the law-abiding citizens from not having the federal government come in and take everybody's guns away. But because of the wording, it has caused some issues. You know, we still have a job to do, that when criminals break the law, we've got to work those cases and stuff, so we just have to watch what we do.
To piggyback off of his question, do all of those other entities have to inform you when they are coming in your county to do whatever work they're gonna do?
Yes, they do.
Good.
All right, Mayor.
Can you confirm for me if the FBI, ATF, and DEA are in our county, and if so, what would be the reason for having them here?
They all have satellite offices, federal offices are everywhere. And the big thing is, you know, we do have a federal courthouse, so they're kind of fingers of the whole federal government. So we do have FBI agents here in Cape County, we have DEA agents here in Cape County, we have marshals here in Cape County. Yes.
What drugs have you seen on the rise in our county?
Methamphetamine.
I wondered if,
Fentanyl was on the.
And fentanyl, yes.
Fentanyl, it's there.
You know, and it's always a battle of even the prescription drugs that aren't their prescription, so.
So we want, I want you guys to know that Sheriff Dickerson, I think I said this earlier, has met with us several times. We've talked to her about Christine Hall's class. She's read the book. She was gifted with the book Sovereign Duty. And so she said she has read that. And so I just want to thank her. I can text her and she responds. And I'm one of 80,000 in the counties. So I just thank you for your service and for your open communication line and anything else anyone else has for her. One more. Thank you very much. tell the citizens have your back, because this is a well-trained right here.
Thank you.
We count on the Constitution. There's a question back here, one more.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to question you. There's a document in my wallet that has your signature on it. So
Okay.
when I found out you'd be here, I was like, hey, you know, I've always wanted to ask you a question. That document authorizes me to carry a concealed weapon in the state of Missouri. And I went to, pay for that document and submit my personal information in order to obtain that permit. Mostly just out of conformity, not out of any general sense of obligation to the law, but I figure it's going to be easier to, if the time ever came, it'd be easier to have the document than to stand up and say, what part of thou shalt not be infringed do you not understand about the Second Amendment? So anyway, I went and got the document anyway. What my question is, the information that I submitted in order to get my concealed carry permit with your office, where does that information end up? What state agency, what federal agencies know that there's a fella at this address who has that permit?
It doesn't.
It only stays within your building?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Hi. I too have your signature in my pocket. And I heard that, can you just tell me if it's true? There's specific gun shops are saying that the federal government is going to start requiring them to give a list of those who have purchased or where I went and got my training from. Is that true? Is that our personal information?
What the federal firearms licensed dealers rules and regulations are? I'm sorry, no, I'm not a FFL, federal firearms licensed dealer, so I do not know all of their rules and regulations, and I have not heard that, no.
Thank you again for coming. We really do appreciate it. So my question is, go ahead. She deserves lots of applause. That's her job. Okay, even though you're not releasing that particular information on all of us concealed carry weapons people, the Department of Revenue is, because we're going to get our IDs, and most of us have learned to carry a separate ID, so when you go to Walmart and you're carded, they don't go, where's your gun? Well, yeah, it's right there, and you didn't have a sign, so yeah, it's in my purse. But do I want that persona when I go in somewhere to do business? No, it's none of their business. They'll never see my weapon unless it's to protect them or my children or myself. So, but the point I'm getting to is, they don't have to have your list. They already have it from the Department of Revenue. Is that not correct?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Originally, when the carry concealed weapon permits came out, it was through the Director of Revenue, everything was, and then it was posted on your license. Now they've changed that. It's no longer posted on your driver's license. That card you get from the sheriff's office is the only identification that you have a carry concealed weapon permit. If it's still on your license, it's because it hasn't cycled through enough to get it changed. But if you still have it on there, when you go to get a new license, it will no longer be on there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think we're gonna go ahead and move on to Representative Hovis. So again, we thank you. You're welcome to stay and quiz Barry as well. Let me unmute him.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you very much.
Well, Barry Hovis, you just missed it because Ruth and Dickerson did a wonderful job. Can you hear us?
No.
I got him unmuted.
Can you hear us?
I have you. I have you unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. I didn't do anything, so it must have been you. You still can't hear us. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Okay. What is the deal? See, there's all the things right at the bottom of the screen.
So if you can hear me, it doesn't show that I'm muted or you either, but I'm not picking up any audio. So it sounds like you can hear me, which I don't mind to talk, I just don't hear anything on your end, so if there's questions, and unless we may have to just get them by text. So I'll go ahead and start on a little update, and not knowing what everyone wants to hear. Today on the House floor, we did deal with congressional redistricting. As you well know, the Senate sent that to us last week, Thursday evening late. Obviously, we were not in session on Friday. It has made it back to the House, and we caucused on it on Monday, discussed our options, which was accept the Senate map as is, which was sent to us, or to go to conference. After a lot of discussion and deliberation, we felt like the Senate version was not appropriate for us in the House. It really messed up the 8th district, congressional district, which is in southeast Missouri, southern Missouri, basically. And so we voted not to accept the Senate's version and to send it to conference. I'm hoping you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, good. So there's quite a discussion today. We voted to send it to conference, which means going to conference between the House and the Senate means that the House will pick 5 members from leadership. 3 of them will be Republicans, 2 of them will be Democrats. The Senate will do the same. 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They will come together in a conference, and they will try to work out the differences. Whatever that map difference is that gets worked out, if they work something out, will come back to each House, the Senate and the House, and we give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. There's no amendments that goes on that. So right now, the map that came back from the Senate has been described to us as a strong 6-2, which they said was a little stronger than the 6-2 map we sent over. I know there's a lot of discussions on 7-1, and I can talk about that here in a little bit if you want me to. But what we saw on the 6-2, specifically with the 8th Congressional District, we lost several other counties that we have always had in the 8th District that's been with us for 40 years, which was Iron, St. Francis, some of those to the north of us. But they drew a finger, I want to call it, where they took us north on the east side of our district and ran us all the way up into suburban St. Louis, which includes all of Jefferson County now. Jefferson County composes about 40,000 people, and we felt like that was going to change the dynamics of the 8th Congressional District. When I say we, myself and the other caucus members that are in the 8th District, we all got together and talked about this. And the dynamics is that it would change the 8th Congressional to, which has always kind of been a rural farming agricultural district, by putting us into the suburbs of St. Louis with Jefferson County. And it's a good county, don't get me wrong, they're very strong Republican, but they also probably tie in better with the St. Louis area than we do with the 8th Congressional District. So by taking the Jefferson County in, there was a discussion on if that's going to change dynamics and give them a third of the voters in the 8th Congressional District. So that was something that kind of caused us not to want to vote for the Senate map. And can you still hear me?
Yes, yes. Thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah, we're okay.
Good. So some other things that we've worked on over the last week or two, And I'll kind of throw out there, I know there's been some interest in Susie Pollock's bill on immunizations. That's not made to the floor yet. There was some talk on that today. We'll be looking at that as we move forward. Other bills that we heard on the floor today was some of the abortion issues, where we're talking about drugs being available for abortions. There was an issue that came up on that, which was and I'll get this wrong, but the tubal pregnancies, where it's not going to be a viable pregnancy, which would result in a surgery or something to save the mother's life. That seemed to become the issue on that, and whether or not people could use the medical pills for early abortions on the myoptic, I think is what it is, pregnancies, which are not sustainable. So that kind of a lot of discussion today. I don't know where that's going to end up going, and there's some other things we've talked about also. I'm open for any questions. I didn't know what all we wanted to talk about today. I know that there's some other issues that I can discuss, but obviously the budget, which is the biggest thing that we do up here and constitutionally required to do, the floor here very quickly, by early as next week, maybe the end of this week. And I know there's about 10 or 12 of those bills primed, ready to go. And we'll finish up with the rest of them the following week, try to get them sent to the Senate. So obviously there's a lot of requests from my area down there, my district in Cape Girardeau City, which does not have a representative right now on several issues. Trying to find some money in the budget for some various programs. I know there was one for the police academy, $3 million. It's probably one of the 4 academies as far as buildings and equipment and size and space in all of Missouri. The governor came down and toured that at a request of meetings I've had with him to look at what we've got, see if there's some money available. We've had some requests for a possible community college aspect at CTC. There's been some requests for monies on that. Obviously, there's some discussion ongoing with SEMO. There's some hesitancy on their part to work with CTC and mental area, because there are some agreements in place on that, which I would probably like to have just a meeting on that alone. But I think the focus would be Associate's for General Studies with. So that's some of the things we think we're kind of lacking in the Cape Girardeau Tri-County area.
Oh, great. Does anybody have a question? I'm back to text it to me, so I'm sorry. If I have a question.
Sure, I'd be happy to take any questions, or maybe if someone has a topic they want to discuss on. Since I'm sitting in a parking lot, I'm not ready to go into another meeting, I wanted to try to get as many questions answered as I could. And I'm going to jump off real quick and look at my text because I can't do it dually here.
Can you hear us now, Barry?
And the bids came back at 15. So they suspended the project. What's that?
So I'm back. The first one I got was, I'm looking good and I do not have a tie on. Thank you very much. I've had a tie on all day and it wears me out after a while. So let me see here. I've got one from Jan on the SEMO budget. Let me look at that again here real quick. So we're talking about the SEMO budget. There are obviously some requests in due to a lot of issues going on. The cost is going to be much higher because of supplies that is going to be needed. I know that they've asked for money there, but I don't know how much they're going to be able to get. Obviously, they're trying to build a new stadium, but stadiums cannot be funded by the state. That's been a rule that's been in place for some time. But obviously the SEMO complex is dealing with also their educational side, which there's several programs that's offered down there by the stadium and buildings associated with that, and that's part of their greater plan. Obviously those things can be funded, and there's some requests in the budget for those items. So we're looking at those and trying to make sure that we're taking care of our community down there by finding available monies, at least from the state level. Also, there was a question about vaccine mandates I just saw pop up. I'm going to look at that one again here to make sure. So the other question here, I got to ask this some time ago, which was talk about vaccine mandates for, National Guardsmen. Apparently that's been pending for a while. Through the National Guard, they have not granted any medical exemptions. And so, since there's been no medical exemptions granted, there's also been no enforcement of those who have not taken the shot. They are pending, is my understanding. I spoke to one of the colonels of the National Guard, who's also a representative up here, and I asked him why they had not made a decision on granting those medical exemptions. And he said, well, they're just kind of waiting to see because the federal government obviously had put down some mandates to get those done, but they are not being enforced as far as anyone losing their job or being affected by it. And so I think they're just kind of on standstill because they don't want to lose any federal money for the National Guard. But at the same time, I think there was a gentleman who was brought to my attention, who I've still not talked to, but he had received a medical exemption through where he worked at one, and then basically could not get one through the National Guard. So I talked to one of the National Guard's colonels about that. We're going to meet with the governor on that. I've already brought it to the attention of his staff to see if he would maybe talk about that and see where he's at on it. Let me see, I think I just got another question here. Tax increase for the Sheriff's Department. And I don't know what part we're on that. That's one that was enacted by the voters here some time ago. And I've lost my video, so I may not be able to see anyone again. But that was $0.5 cent, and that'll be kicking in here fairly quickly. Things to note on that, that half cent, if I remember correctly, was going to bring in about $7 million-ish, depending on receipts. I know that the Ruth Ann, when she had talked about her budget for that, back when we were passing that here a year and a half ago, that would make up what they needed from general revenue. It's one of those things where I had a little concerns with because their whole budget at the time we passed that half-cent sales tax was between $7 and $8 million. So this was going to fully fund that. I think her request was going to put her budget up around $10 million, which they needed to hire some additional staffing, probably increase pay because it's really hard to keep public safety people right now. And so I don't know what the net gain was going to be for general revenue for the county. So that's something that I don't have the numbers on, and probably can't talk too much about that. So if I get some more numbers, maybe we can touch on those. We also talked about a very interesting thing on the floor today. The next question was women's sports. There is some bills to deal with that if you're a biological male, you cannot compete in female sports in Missouri. There's actually some bills on that. It kind of was unique. It came up today. We asked several Democrats, one of the other Republicans, Nick Shore, asked several female Democrats what their definition of a female was. And I would encourage you, if you can get back on and watch the video of that today, you should go see what they had to say about that. At best, they had no definition. And so I thought that was really telling to me with what they were trying to say. Obviously, my definition is biological at birth. XY means you're a male. I think XX is a female. If I've got my chromosomes right, I can't remember. It's been a little lost in that biology class. But I think they even quoted the new Supreme Court justice who said that who didn't have a definition of that. And I think one of the definitions I heard today was, well, there's the medical one, and there's a whole lot of stuff that was said that I didn't agree with. But they kind of kept it pretty civil. But basically, we're just trying to get them to come up with their definition and put it out there so we can share that with the rest of the Missourians that maybe didn't get to hear that today. And I still can't hear what's going on there, so I apologize. I may be talking randomly, but if there's any other questions, feel free to send to me, and maybe next time we can kind of get this worked out.
No other questions, anyone? No other questions at this moment.
If you can hear me, Jan, is there other questions?
Oh, can you hear me now?
So I don't see any other questions at the moment. There may be some internal discussion going on there. One thing that I think we should prime for is, and this is kind of going on peripherally with the community college aspect. One of the things that Cape has is we do have a four-year college and they do a great job there. One of the things that I think with the community college that we need to be talking about is do we want that service broadened? I know there was a study done that said we didn't need a community college in Cape, but that was because we had associations with Mineral Area and the Three Rivers. DTC has decided to try to expand those options because they were very, very limited. And there's a lot of discussion going on with that right now. There's actually a request for $10 million to be able to expand that campus off for a full associate's degree there with the ability for our students graduating school to use A+ money, which would help them hopefully be able to live at home, stay closer to home, eat at home, use their A+ money, and get their first 2 years of college a lot cheaper than what it would be if you had to go to a four-year university for general studies. There's a lot of debate on that right now. You may start seeing something in the paper on this, but I just know there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I'd like to be able to share, but hopefully we'll know more in the next few weeks on this to see if that $10 million that we've got for the expansion of the campus stays in there. Because we've got record monies here at Jeff City, and there's lots of discussions on how that should be handled, whether it should be rebates, whether it should be one-time spending on infrastructure throughout the state. So lots of big discussions on that right now.
Any other questions?
I'm pretty much done for right now, unless you guys have other questions, but
He wants to know where
very supportive of what you guys are doing, and hope to see you guys soon, and maybe next time I can make one in person.
We the people are giving that money.
Oh, someone met your wife at the NRA banquet and said she's a sweetheart.
Is this where I sign off? Can you hear me? Thumbs up?
Oh, sorry. I sent you another text.
He's signing off.
No, he's signed. No,
Somebody said they met my wife at the banquet and said she's a sweetheart. I totally agree with you. So she keeps things going at home, and sometimes she gives me a little grief. Last week was I made a joke at the banquet that it was our anniversary, and so to take her out, I brought her to the NRA banquet. She didn't have that money when we got home, so I got in trouble over that one. So I still owe her a nice dinner out somewhere some night. So for all the other guys out there that's listening on this meeting, have her take your wife to a banquet for the NRA fundraiser gun thing. It's probably not the way to handle your anniversary. So just some words of wisdom there from someone who's already been through it last week. I'm getting off. Thank you very much, and hope to be at one of your. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about the audio. All right. Gotta get off here.
There's the fourth one.
All right.
It's there.
I want to borrow that.
All right, well, we always. Every week is interesting. We just never know what's gonna happen. But you guys provide grace and mercy every single week, so I thank you for that. All right, so we're gonna draw. We have one drawing here, and we're gonna have one of our new ladies do the drawing.